Hello there. I'm Michael Thomas, instructor at the Academy of Historical Fencing, and today I'm going to give you a little overview and a review of a sword that I had made a couple of years ago, probably about 3 years ago, by a company called Swordsmithy. Now the bad news is if you actually want to get one, Swordsmithy seem to have vanished. Their Facebook page and their website still exist, but trying to contact them is all but impossible. If you're able to get in touch with them, let me know how you did it, because they do make some really nice stuff, and I know loads of people that are waiting to buy things from them. But the last time I contacted them, I had no reply from them, which is not a good sign. And there are quite a few comments on their Facebook page of disgruntled people wanting to know where they've gone. So that's a bit of an arse. But anyway, back to the actual sword. I'll show you on their website, on their Facebook page, what I actually ordered. And then I'll show you the real deal. So here's the let's go full page on that first of all. Right, here's the it's not full page, is it? Good grief. Right, there we go. So there's the actual sword I ordered. So it's a sword made by Swordsmithy. It's a Schiavona with a curved blade, which is a little out of the ordinary, but they did exist. There are historical examples of these. You have to bear in mind that the hilt, the Schiavona sort of. Oh, I'm spoiling it a little bit there. You're not supposed to have seen that yet. The Schiavona is referring to the hilt type, so you can have a Schiavona hilt on all kinds of blades, and I would know because I have loads of them. I'm a big fan of the hilt type. With and without rings, as in thumb rings, and I have an original as well. So I currently have a darkwood sort of broadsword bladed Schiavona. I have a Swordsmithy curved sort of saber type Schiavona. I have a darkwood custom rapier that was based on an actual historical example in. I think it was in the Met. No, or was it? No, it was Boston. It was in one of the Boston museums in the United States, and he made me a custom blade based on that. It's about 95% accurate, and I'm always on the lookout for more. Oh, plus my original as well, which I will actually show you in a moment. But this particular one, not that many people are making curved blades for this particular hilt type. And not a lot of people are making ones that I would actually want to use for sparring. Many of them, they have cages that are absolutely gigantic. You could fit a sort of a full-size mitten inside that thing, and there'd still be space. The open ports at the front are so big you could put your hand through, your left hand through. So they're more like Schiavona, sort of based on a Schiavona rather than actually being one, because they're so big and oversized. They have the aesthetic, and that's about it. Now, the reason I like this Schiavona, apart from it looking a little different, is it's such a pretty hilt type. There are lots of different types. You can get them where they're almost fully enclosed. You can get them like this particular example where it's quite open. There's all kinds of different weapons that you can get. But the main thing is it just looks cool, which is that ticks the most important box for me. Now, this particular sword, I think it cost either 300 or 350 euros, which is insane. Yeah, you can see their email address there. Well, you could if I move my head out of the way. Let's have a look. There we go. So yeah, contact that email address and see if you can actually get in touch with them. Then let me know, because I want to talk to them. But anyway, you look at the sword. It looks really pretty in the images. Look at that. It's a decent cage. The inside doesn't look particularly amazing, actually. Could do with a little bit of polishing. But the cat's head pommel, nice. It's peened, so it's not going to keep rattling all the time. And unusually, the cage actually is attached. It's linked, not actually physically attached to the pommel, but it does have this small link, sort of like a chain piece, which you find on historical examples, joining the two together. It's quite rare to find a company that actually does this. Most people that make these types of swords, in my experience, they just let it hang loose. So you've got this big heavy cage that twists and rattles, and that's not great. Now the crossguard, you often find these have been straightened on historical examples, so they look like this. most people would agree that they should actually be bent down. They're not actually bent down because they start bent down, so they should be made so that they actually curl around the cage. I've been meaning to get mine done for ages, but I'm paranoid about bending and heating up parts of my swords because I'm just crap with metalwork. So I'll either get my brother to do that, and then I'll blame him if he breaks it, or I'll find somebody else that's competent with metal and they can do it. But, you know, that'll probably happen in another 3 years, knowing me. Right, let's pop back. Okay, so here's my particular example. Now, I have used this a lot, so it's looking a little hacksawish. I'll talk about that in a moment. But as I've said in some of my other videos, sometimes you don't get the sword that you've seen on the website or Facebook. But again, as with Kveithen, they sent me what I ordered, and look at the detailing on this. That is really nice. You know, you've got a cool pommel, some nice detailing. It's properly weighted, and then look at the grip. Get the light on it. There you go. So you got the nice leather grip that's got the wire banding around it, and then these nice little, I'm going to use the word again, embellishments here and here. It's a really nice sword to hold. It's got if I rotate it around, you can see it's got a D-ring. Not a D-ring, what am I talking about? A thumb ring inside, which is quite common on originals. The blade, it's a triple fullered blade, running, let's have a look, 2/3 at least the length of the blade. It's got a rolled tip, which we cover when we're sparring, but I've taken it off to show you on this video. But the blade has taken a bit of a beating. And one of the things we found with Swordsmithy blades is they do seem to take quite a bit of damage. This one is going to have the edge sort of worked on before I use it again for sparring. It's not actually sharp. As you can see, I'm running bare skin along the edge, and it's not cutting me. But if I move that quickly, I wouldn't be surprised if it did. So that's going to need to be hammered and rubbed down to make it safe again. But if you look at the weak of the blade, that's taken quite a bend. Look at that. I'll bring it back. Basically, the last chunk of blade, about this long, it's very thin. I don't know if you can see where it tapers. No, it doesn't really show very well on the camera. But from about here down to the tip, it gets really thin, which makes a really safe blade, and obviously until it breaks, and then it's very not safe. But what it does mean is, when you're sparring, if you look at that, you've got this really safe tip that bends nicely when you stab people, which we like. But it does also mean that it's putting a lot of strain on this quite weak part of the blade, and I wouldn't be surprised if that snaps at some point. In fact, I almost want it to snap so I can then go and get a new blade fitted on it. I'll probably get somebody like Alex from Kraken Swords in the US to get a new blade for me and to kind of reforge it. He's a great guy for sort of turning worn out, knackered swords into brand new legendary swords. So I think that will be a project for him when this finally dies. So it's kind of worth me using it more so I can break it, so I can get it upgraded. That's my rationale anyway. So let's have a look at that cage. Now that's some nice work. I've seen lots of cages. A lot of them don't look like an actual Schiavona. They look just like something that's kind of based on it, with these huge cages and thick bars. Well, these are not particularly thick, and yet they've retained their structural integrity quite nicely. It hasn't kind of collapsed in. None of the bars have bent off. I had an armor class Schiavona 15 years ago, with the one with the shark skin here. It looked quite pretty, but the hilt smashed to pieces in a couple of fights. It was absolute junk. Whereas this has been in loads of fights, and well, you can tell from the blade. In fact, there's tons of damage on the blade, not much on the hilt. I've obviously been hitting people and not being hit. Well, not too often anyway. But yeah, you can see that's really nice quality, and the hand goes in well. I pop my hand in there without a glove. This just feels right. Oops, let's bring it back. The thumb goes through the thumb ring. Now, I didn't give them any measurements for this. They didn't ask for any measurements, as most companies don't, which I don't generally like, unless it's something standard like a pattern sabre. It's a British military sabre, in which case you know exactly what you're getting. But with this, I just had to hope it worked, and it did, up to a point. So you can see it fits in the hand nicely. You can use it without the thumb ring if you want, but it puts pressure on the back of the thumb. I wouldn't recommend it. In fact, if you catch it with a heavy cut, I think you might break the back of the thumb if you do that. So don't do that. So it really is designed to be used with that thumb ring. But the thumb ring is well placed. Now, the one problem I do have with this sword, and it's why I really need to get somebody else involved so that they can make a couple of modifications, is the minute I put a glove on. So just a lightly armoured police riot glove. Pop it in here. It all actually fits nicely in there, but whereas on the inside it's all nice and comfortable and there's lots of space, on the outside my knuckles now are, and also right down here, are all pressed into the cage. But you think that doesn't sound too bad, but you don't want your hands wedged in these kinds of swords, because you do need to have a kind of a supple rotation in the hand, as with sort of military sabre as well, to perform a lot of the techniques. So I find when it's in here, it's locked, and when I've done half a dozen rotations and then some meaty parries, it starts to rub on the outside. We don't rubbing. That's no good. But it wears your glove away. It hurts your hand, and we don't want to get hurt. We're not about getting hurt. Especially when you've got something like this to stop you getting hurt. It seems a little ironic that your hand is being hurt by the thing protecting it. We don't want that. So what I'm going to do, or I'm going to try and get somebody to do anyway, is with this cage, I just want it pulled out. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, it should be doable. I just want it, basically this piece around here, I want it just pulled out just a little bit. With that done, it would fit perfectly around my hand. Now, I've had some really expensive Schiavonas in the past, and if they're not made to your hand, they're either not going to, you're not going to be able to use a glove inside them, or even worse, in my experience, your hand kind of sits in the middle of a giant cage. It's like a giant bowl fitted around it, so which impinges on some of your rotations, and it looks god awful. I'm going to show you an original now. I'm not wearing gloves because I've washed my hands beforehand. I'm going to wash them afterwards, and then I'm going to the sword's due for some maintenance. It's going to be cleaned. It's going to be dried off. It's going to be oiled. It's going to get the works. It's the special day for the Schiavona. Right, so you can see what an actual real deal Schiavona looks like. Well, I have to admit, I don't really want to hold the blade with my hand, so I'm going to use a bit of kitchen roll to hold it. Okay, so where's the end? So you can see, so this is a straight bladed, like sort of a broadsword hilted, or sort of broadsword sort of style Schiavona. Now notice it's 400 years or so old, and there are things that need to be, that if you were going to use it, you'd want to fix. For example, the cage should be down to here and attached, as you saw with my Swordsmithy. Let's have a look. Oh, let's get the other way around. So you see that should be brought down to the cat's head pommel and attached. In fact, the cat's head on the Swordsmithy is a fancier version, but my original's not attached. And there's, when you have original swords, you leave them as they are. Obviously, you maintain them, but as a general rule, you don't bend, twist, and adjust. The shape it's in now is the shape that I had it when I bought it, years and years ago, and that's the shape it'll stay. I'm not going to twist, bend, or adjust. For whatever reason, it ended up like this, and that's the way it will stay. Now, it has a thumb ring. Let's have a look. Come around there. So you can see the thumb ring is part of the outside cage, but it's not attached inside. It hooks all the way around. Just turn it. You can just about see it's like a little tooth popping up. So that's where it ends. And you put your thumb in. Oh, look at that. It just, not made for me, and yet it is made for me. It's a perfect fit. Now this blade, although it looks... Well, actually, I've got sparring blades that are in a worse condition than this. It has the Venetian arsenal marking on it, which is not really easy to see, so I won't bother in this light. But I can take photos with, so take some macro photos if anybody wants to see that. It also looks like in the past it's been snapped. Let's have a look. Yeah, if you can see here, it looks like at some point in the past, and it may not have, but I think personally that it's been repaired. As to how that happened, who knows? Hopefully it has an interesting story. It wasn't just somebody was a muppet and got it wedged in a door and then snapped it. But who knows? But interestingly, the steel is really great. I'm not, it's got. I don't want to put too much pressure on, but it's got a little bit of flex in there. It's a sort of a nice. It's got a nice sort of diamond section going through, and the edges are still sharp. And that's not a Sean Bean quote. I suppose it is. But it is still sharp. I could take this out now and start hacking away, and it will cut. And I've never sharpened it. It's really nice, hard, good quality steel. Feels great. But the reason I show you this is not to show off an original Schiavona. It's so that you can see an original, not the same, but you can see an original next to a Repro. And looking at this, you can see the Repro has a slightly bigger cage. But Swordsmithy didn't go over the top. They made something that actually looks like a good sparring version of an original sword. So I think they did. Yeah, look at that. I think they actually did a pretty good job of a hilt that, but from what I've heard, is not particularly easy to make. Now let me just pop this back on the floor. Okay, so. That's a sort of a 400-year-old original, and then this is a 4 or 5-year-old training sword. So again, it was quite cheap to buy. It's fun to use. What's it like with a saber blade? Well, it doesn't actually move as quickly as a saber. You go up against somebody practicing British military saber and use this. If you use it just like a normal saber, you're going to be at a slight disadvantage. But if you start treating it like what it actually is, a basket-hilted sword with a curved blade, it's kind of a curious hybrid. You've got that extra hand protection, so you can keep the sword out in front, which allows you to perform, to fight in a slightly different style. And you've got the curved blade, which has all kinds of little extra benefits, which you'll know if you use curved blades. So you need to practice with it. If you just pick it up and start fighting, there are, you'll find that it's heavier. It's got a bit more. The extra hand protection adjusts the way the blade moves. So you need to do a few fights to get used to the changes. But I really like it. Plus, it's my favourite hilt type, so I'm kind of programmed to like it anyway. Don't think there's much else to say about it. I don't recall the specs, but if anybody really wants to know, I'll pop it on the scales and weigh it. But being as you can't even buy them anymore, well, you can't get in contact with them anyway, I suspect it won't be that important. But if you're looking for another sword maker to make you a Schiavona, I would really make sure that they make the sword for you. They're not making the swords to sell to you. It's a subtle distinction, but if you just buy an off-the-shelf Schiavona, it's rare that it actually fits. This one is the one of the exceptions. And if you're having a custom sword made, make sure they make it to your hand and to the glove you're going to be using. Otherwise, you end up with a very expensive sword that is just not going to work right. Or they just make a massive hilt, which will work with any glove, and it doesn't look nice. It just looks like sort of fan-inspired or sort of Schiavona-inspired fan art. You don't want that. Anyway, that's a Schiavona with the sort of a curved sort of saber-type blade from Swordsmithy. I'll just show you their page again, just in case you want to get in touch with them. If you have any questions about the Swordsmithy sword, or about any of my other swords, or any questions about HEMA or blockade runners, or anything else, just drop me a message on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll do my best to help. Thank you.